With DHCP, IP addresses are assigned dynamically. A DHCP server will place a predefined time limit called a lease duration on IP addresses to ensure that they are not left in an assigned state if they are no longer needed. When a DHCP lease reaches 50% of the lease time, the client automatically attempts to renew the lease. This process occurs in the background. Let's say at this point that a computer has stopped using its assigned IP address in the middle of its lease. For example, the computer was moved to another subnet or just removed entirely. Then the lease expires and becomes potentially available to other clients. So first, the DHCP client sends a unicast DHCP request packet and attempts to renew the lease. Next, the server that leased the IP address originally sends a DHCP message back to the client. This message contains any new parameters that have changed since the creation of the original lease. Note that these packets do not broadcast because the client at this point has an IP address that it can use for unicast communications. If the DHCP client cannot contact the DHCP server to renew its lease, then the client waits until 87.5% of the lease time expires. At this point, the client sends a DHCP request broadcast rather than a unicast to get a renewal, and the request goes to all the DHCP servers, not just the server that gave the original lease. However, this broadcast request is for a lease renewal, not a new lease. If the lease renewal is successful, the lease period is reset. If the client fails to obtain a renewal, in other words, if 100% of the lease time has expired, it attempts to obtain an IP configuration from any DHCP server. If the default gateway doesn't respond, the client assumes it's on a new subnet and enters the discovery phase. The DHCP lease generation process simply begins over again, with the DHCP client broadcasting a DHCP discover.